Welcome to The Prisoner's Dilemma, the show where we watch and talk about the 1960s TV show The Prisoner. I'm Brendan, and with me as always is my co-host, Matthew.
Hi, it's me. I'm surprised you didn't have a bit.
Matthew, I've got really bad news.
Oh?
Yeah, I think you're going insane.
Oh, I'm going insane. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, it's not good.
Oh, sorry.
Over and over and over again, you come into this room and you say the same things over and over and over again to other people. And to prove it, here I'm going to use the power of video editing to take things you've said before and intersperse them with clips of other people as if they were in my chair talking to you.
You're really signing yourself up for a lot of editing work.
Hey.
Oh, hi.
Hey, it's me, Brendan.
Hi, Brendan.
No, I'm not Brendan. I'm the other...
You're Crendon, maybe?
I'm
Crendon? Ah, okay.
Hey.
Hi. For the people who don't have video, which is everyone, Brendan is using his hand as sort of a sock puppet / Muppet situation.
Hey, you're going crazy.
Okay. Well, that's good, I guess.
You said all this to me last time.
The last time that I talked to your hand?
You told me someone was trying to kill me.
I haven't talked to your hand since the 1990s.
Hey.
Oh, it's a third one.
Hey, I'm a different past co-host.
You sound like Cookie Monster.
Yeah, I get that a lot.
Oh, okay. Am I going crazy?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
It's me, Brendan. I'm back again. It's
There
too
it
bad
is.
we'll never learn who the third co-host's name was.
Yeah, they tragically died.
Yeah, Crendon was pretty inspired.
All right, yeah. It's this episode.
It is. This week we watched It's Your Funeral.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've got a lot to say about it, but I think we need to just jump right in and talk about what happens insofar as anyone can describe what happens in this episode.
Yeah, all right. I'll give you a summary and we can actually dig into it.
It's mostly just people talking to one another.
I mean, that's what a normal Prisoner episode is. But this one is even more disjointed than that. Anyway. Number 50, a young woman we will later know as Monique, enters Six's room and wakes him up under the watchful eye of the village wardens. Monique attempts to convince Six of a looming assassination plot targeting number 2. This fails due to Six's suspicions of her being sent by the wardens. The wardens, upset that their plan has failed, use computer analysis to predict Six's schedule and then have a number 100 replace Six's watch with a broken duplicate during a Kosho match. Six's broken watch leads him to the watchmaker, number 51. There he learns that 51 is working on a wireless remote detonation device for a bomb, and later that he is Monique's father. Six and Monique fail to convince 51 to give up on his plan on killing number 2. With no other option, Six warns 2 of the assassination plot directly, which is what 2 wanted all along. 2 claims that since Monique and her father are both jammers who have previously reported too many fake plots, he cannot believe 6. 6 later returns to 2's house with additional proof, only to find a new, old number 2. This old 2 reveals that the young 2 seen earlier is his heir presumptive, as he will retire during an upcoming Appreciation Day ceremony. Despite some initial misgivings due to young 2 faking some footage, the old 2 comes to believe 6's warning. During the ceremony, Six and Monique find 51 and easily take the remote detonator from him. After a brief scuffle with number 100, Six gives the remote detonator to the old two after the seal of office / bomb is around the neck of the young two, buying him time to escape.
That's true. All of that does happen.
All of that does happen.
This episode really makes me feel for what could have been.
Sure.
There's a lot of there's a lot of potential in this thing. There's
Totally.
a lot of concepts. There's a lot of situations. There's a lot of words and ideas that get bandied about. Any of which I could imagine turning into an interesting episode of The Prisoner.
Uh-huh.
That is not what we get. What we get, I think, is something that, in a very surface level way, and frankly kind of a shallow way, kind of works as there is a problem, and one noble man decides he's going to do something about it, and so he does, and the problem is solved.
Sure.
Which is not really what I want from a first episode at this point. I think there's a lot of interesting ideas, particularly through the lens with which we have been looking at The Prisoner.
Totally.
I think in particular the idea of number 6 needing to save the life of a number 2 is really interesting. I think the idea of 2 number 2s being active at the same time is really interesting. I think some of the technology that they have going here is pretty interesting.
Totally.
I think it's pretty hamstrung by a script that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, some pretty lackluster performances, and a lot of tension behind the scenes.
Yes, I completely agree on all those points. I'm so excited. I'm so glad to be talking about The Prisoner with you again. It's been weeks, but this is one of 2 sort of low points in the season for me, and I'm usually the positive one on these episodes. I completely agree. I think there's good stuff going on. I have a lot to talk about. I think there's a lot to dig into in this episode, so that's something. But yeah, it ultimately just doesn't work very well.
Should we just get into it?
Let's get into it. I mean, before actually, maybe we usually do this in the other way around, but maybe this time we should actually frame this a little bit.
Sure.
In terms of the writer and director on this. The writer is Michael Cremoy. The director is Robert Asher. These are ITC Entertainment, just factory workers, basically. Right.
Part of the system.
Yeah, they're completely part of the system, right? These are people who do direct.
To be clear, I interrupt you to say that's not necessarily a pejorative. You know what I mean?
No.
It's they were working in spy fiction in the 60s, and that was sort of an established form, and they knew what to do, and they were good at that kind of thing.
Yes, they were good at spy fiction.
Yes.
Right, but not necessarily The Prisoner.
Sure.
Right.
No one had made this.
No one had made this, of course. But
including importantly, the people that were currently working on it.
Yes. But I think that last time, for the very last episode we covered, we had Roger Wotis, right? Who was clearly brought on because he was this sort of philosopher / comedian / thinker, right? Mm-hmm. And that I think leads to a really strong episode. But I think in this case, from the jump, they're sort of starting at a weaker position because you have these 2 people who are very skilled at writing spy fiction, but are not necessarily skilled at writing The Prisoner or making The Prisoner. And you're right, we didn't know what that meant. But I do think that's starting you off sort of poorly footed, maybe.
Oh, absolutely. And from what I can tell, having watched a lot of behind the scenes stuff for this, that didn't get better as production went on.
No. I saw at least one claim that McGowan ended up stepping in to direct partway through filming this. Did you find anything to substantiate that?
I didn't find anything that said that he completely replaced it, but I did see reports from people that were on set that he had shouting matches with Michael Cremoy, the director of, or excuse me,
Robert Asher. Yeah,
Robert Asher had shouting matches with Robert Asher I'll just go ahead and jump ahead. There was a couple of interviews taken both at the time and then much later for the Prisoner Blu-ray release. One pair of which was with Annette Andre, who plays Monique, sort of the damsel in distress for the episode, and then a pair with Darren Nesbitt, one of the number 2s for the episode. Both of whom did not have a whole lot of great stuff to say about Patrick McGoohan.
No.
I'll talk a little bit more about Annette in a bit, but she chalked up a lot of his behavior to the fact that she thought he was having a breakdown based on the amount of work that he was doing. Again, starring, writing, directing, producing, show running to a degree in basically every single episode.
Yep.
And then the bit that I wanted to bring up now is Nesbitt brought up that when he got brought on, again, he gets brought on partway through production. The show has not gone to air yet. It's under a lot of secrecy. People are trying really hard to keep what this thing is kind of hidden away from the rest of production. And so a lot of people who are actors and writers who are not directly involved in it have only really heard about it, but don't know what it is. Right. So there's not a lot of onboarding, so to speak, of hey, welcome to the set of The Prisoner. Here's what's going on. And so Darren Nesbitt gets this script. They'd originally, I guess, talked to him about being a number 2 or maybe even a permanent number 2 in the very earliest parts of the production. That got thrown out because, of course, we don't have a permanent number 2. And then he gets recruited for this episode. He gets the script and he doesn't really understand what's going on. He's only got this script, importantly. I don't think he has the show Bible that McGoohan had put together. And there wasn't videotapes sitting around of other episodes to go watch to get an idea of it. And so he's in his dressing room one day.
In the dressing room in the crack of dawn. And there's a knock on the door, and the door opens. There's Robert Asher, who is the director. And he said, Darren, we've never worked together. I said, no, we never had. He said, I know I shouldn't say this as the director. He said, but do you know what the fuck this is all about? I said, I got not the faintest fucking idea. He said, well, they've said I can look at the first episode because they're not ready yet. It's not yet built. So I'm going to see the first episode. So go and have another breakfast. So I did. I had another breakfast. And I'm sitting in my dressing room. And there's another knock on the door. And Robert comes in. And I said, well, Robert, did you know what's going on? He said, I haven't got the faintest idea what's going on. So we do the show. And we're doing it. And then McGoohan comes up to me. And he says, what are you doing? You're playing him for comedy. You look like you don't know what's going on. I said, wait a minute. I said, not only do I not know what the fuck is going on, the director doesn't know what the fuck is going on. The entire crew doesn't know what the fuck is going on. And what is more, you don't know what the fuck is going on. And if you think I'm going to play someone who knows what's going on when he doesn't know what's going on, go fuck yourself.
This is a troubled episode to put together, it seems like.
It does seem that way. Yeah, there were lots of reports of McGoohan not sleeping enough or sleeping in the editing bay, right? Being basically manic or panicked for most of this episode. It's pretty rough. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think it's worth going into any discussion of the episode with that notion, because if somebody just watched this episode and then is listening to this, they may not know that there's all these production problems happening in the background, right?
Right.
So let's get that out ahead of time. But now we can talk.
One other thing to bring up there is that I think you can really start to feel the budget pinch here.
Totally.
This episode is recorded almost entirely on set.
Yep.
With any shots of Port Merion taken without any of the principals in it.
Right.
More than ever, I've really felt like the hand of the editor trying to stitch these scenes together.
Yep.
The reuse of previous episodes' footage, stuff like that. There's a couple of situations where lines had to be overdubbed for one reason or another.
Noticed that.
It's the production really kind of starting to fray at the edges for this one in particular.
Yeah. The bit that I found said that Michael Cremoy, the writer, was brought on specifically with the remit to come up with a plot that would involve no new Portmeirion footage.
It worked.
Well, it did work, I guess. He accomplished the brief.
Yeah.
Okay. With that production stuff all figured out, we can jump right into the episode, I think.
Yep.
So we start immediately. We have, you already mentioned her name, but this is Annette Andre, who is number 50 / Monique. She was a ballet dancer turned actress. She was Philia in A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. She had some one-off roles in like Avengers, The Saint, etc. Right? So one of these sort of like damsel ladies who'd show up in some spy fiction. Right? She goes in to wake up number 6 under the watchful eye of, he's back again. I said last time that he would be back. He is immediately back. Peter Swanwick, our classic supervisor / controller, number 28, and our brand new, you already mentioned him, right? Number 2, Darren Nesbitt, who is wearing an incredible hairpiece. It is so good. I love this hairpiece.
He looks great. In this
He
scene,
does.
he's wearing a dressing gown. He's very bright character.
Yes.
He's got these really excellent looking thick rimmed glasses that are a big part of his whole look.
Yeah, you mentioned editing though, and this clearly played hell with the editor because there's all these cuts where the glasses will be on his face and then off his face immediately after that.
Yeah.
But he does do a great job of like using them as a prop, right?
Yes, extremely.
I think he's great the whole episode.
I think he's
Go ahead.
great, except when he's bullying the dang supervisor. The supervisor is
Sure.
back on the job. He does not deserve this.
It's true. But he did mess with the plan. So, plan Operation Q or whatever that we're going to have to talk about at some point. Sorry, Plan Division Q.
Mm-hmm.
This whole initial scene, I think, just basically works fine. I don't think this is where any problems have come in. I think, number 50, Monique, waking up 6, him not believing her, 2 revealing who's clearly like just gotten up, right? He's wearing the number 2 dressing gown, which means he just got out of bed from below the number 2 office. There's even a cut bit in the script where they call him over. Mm-hmm. Him revealing that they drugged her the day before and that they like specifically timed it so that she would like be knocked out now, right? This is how closely they've planned whatever this is. We get a little like hint of like, oh, there's something bigger going on. Like you don't want to ruin it by like just having the door open or whatever. Right. We learn about an assassination plot. That's exciting, right?
Yeah.
Like just this beginning, I think it's a fine prisoner opening.
I would go so far as to say I think it's good insofar as I think the best dialogue writing of the episode takes place here. Sure. I think the back and forth both between number 2 and the supervisor and between 50 and 6 is snappy and engaging and entertaining.
Totally. I also think it does a nice job of showing a parallelism between these two groups, right? Mm-hmm. In terms of who's being dominant here, right? It's 6 in one scene, 2 in the other. Right. Interesting.
Yeah, and it gets everyone on screen, right? It like introduces you to everyone, nearly all of the major players right away.
Totally. It is interesting, though. I wanted to bring up in this early scene 2 reads that as soon as they transform Monique into a damsel in distress, 6 will immediately like get on side. That's the call they make. It doesn't work.
It doesn't work completely, but they are right that his attitude does change to a degree.
Totally.
I would say that he doesn't become like a gallant white knight, but he does become the gallant white knight equivalent of a number 6.
It does push him into the right frame of mind for sure. But notably, right, their prediction was he's gonna hear this, he's gonna see her collapse, and then he's gonna like get on side and want to protect her, right? Sure. But I think this is interesting in terms of, again, thinking about in the last ep, right? When we were talking through like, why does he rush to the aid of the lady and hammer into Anvil, right? There's a notion that, number 6 is just constantly going around saving damsels in distress, right?
Right.
But that's not actually true if you look at the actual instances of this happening.
Totally.
And I think that's interesting.
What do you think of Annette Andre?
I think that she's better than a bunch of the wilting violets we've seen, in terms of she's not just oh no, number 6. Oh, I couldn't possibly. She has a little bit of a spine, which is something.
Sure.
But I think this first scene is her best scene, probably, which is a real problem.
Yeah, I think I agree that she is not quite the wilting violet, but I kind of attribute that more to the writing than I do her performance. I think, unfortunately, she is not very good. I would agree. I would put her maybe middle of the pack as actresses go on this show. I bring it up because, not to call her out or anything like that, in a way, just seeing any kind of performance is great, because it means they thought, oh, maybe we should have a woman on screen here. And to their credit, a woman who doesn't betray him or have some sort of other agenda or something like that.
Though she is being manipulated by the village.
She's being manipulated, yes.
So she's actually being very similar to how number 8 in Arrival was, right?
Sure.
Who, she's completely open and honest, but her open and honesty is being used to the village's ends.
Totally. But, or in the Queen from Checkmate.
Totally.
But because she's not, disposed of or made to be basically completely lifeless by the end of it, she's at least afforded that by the script. All that is to bring up that I mentioned before, I saw 2 interviews with Annette Andre, but her treatment basically at McGowan's hands is a real black mark on his history.
For sure.
The production of the show, evidently really pretty passive aggressive and aggressive in terms of criticizing her performance.
Yes.
She really just did not have a good time with it, and she spoke with a lot of other actresses who didn't have the opportunity to be interviewed after the fact that evidently went through the same sort of treatment.
Yes. I mean, so notably, right, when we're talking about in this day and age when there's all sorts of, sexual abuse issues and things like that, we're not talking about that. Right? What we're talking about here is just being extremely critical and, even physical, yes, but physical in terms of pushing somebody around or into a position or things like that, right? Not being respectful of somebody's sort of bodily autonomy in that way, just to draw a line. Yeah, it's tough. It's rough.
There was a particular line from him to her saying after a performance that she had given where she had walked off the set and he had been watching, and he mentioned to her as she was passing off, I think you thought that was good. Yeah. And then later that day was talking with her as another scene was going on and said to her, you work from the heart. You should work from your head.
Jeez Louise. Well, he spent much of the rest of his life being a villain, so...
Yeah, all these crimes Columbo will one day get him for.
Yeah, let's go.
Let's go.
So from here, right, we do have this thing you mentioned of 2 yelling at poor Peter Swanwick, number 28, about you left the door open. That's going to make him more suspicious, right?
Yeah, he's got a plan. He's got a plan that he's working on here. Yeah,
we don't quite know what it is yet. But he immediately calls for a computer analysis, right, of number 6. This leads us to a computer room. In fact, I think it's the same computer room that we were in for a bunch in Hammer into Anvil, right?
Yep, it is the same code breaker kind of machine.
Yep. A wall of computers and a little little desk area for somebody running the thing. A little person, a hobbit who's there, who's running the whole thing. So here we see this lady, this number 8, who's this computer attendant. She's the blonde, right? Who's sitting there. She's eventually going to deliver to number 2, the sort of readout of number 6's day. And Brendan, you know who this person is.
Uh-oh.
I promise you do. We're going to play a little game.
Uh-oh. Hang on.
I have prepared games because I was so worried about this episode.
It's not that bad.
It's not that bad, but it is bad.
We have worse.
We have,
Okay.
we'll get there.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a series of clues, and I want to see how long it takes for you to realize who this person is. Sounds good?
Sure.
This is Wanda Ventham is her name, but I don't suspect you'll know the name.
Wanda Ventham.
Ventham, yeah. Don't
I
look her
brought
up.
up the episode. I'm not looking her up. I'm just looking
Okay.
at her sitting
Okay.
at her little Oompa Loompa machine.
All right. Clue 1. She was in a large BBC series popular in the 2010s.
What do you mean large?
Um,
Do you
in terms
mean
of production.
in terms of production? Okay, not in
Yes.
terms of number of episodes.
No, not in terms of number of episodes.
Okay.
Any guesses?
Wanda Venfem. Is she Mrs. John Watson?
No, it's a good guess, but
Okay.
no. Second guess. She played a character's mother.
She played a character's mother.
Mm-hmm.
It was a BBC production, so I'm guessing it was a television program.
Correct?
Program with 2 M's and an E.
Yes, of course.
Played a character's mother.
Mm-hmm.
Popular in the 2010s.
Mm-hmm.
Let me think about shows from that era.
Mhm.
I've already gestured at the Sherlock. It's not a large number of episodes, so it's not a Doctor Who. It's not Lex. Lex was from Canada.
Do you want another hint?
I want one more hint.
She is actually the actor's actual mother.
She's the actor's actual mother, Wanda Venfem. I assume the actor does not have the same.
No.
No. I give up.
She's Benedict Cumberbatch's mom. She plays Sherlock's mom in Sherlock. Isn't that incredible?
I mean, I'm looking at her and I'm superimposing Benedict's face on top of it.
Uh-huh.
I see it.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
I learned that because I was like going through all the IMDb and all this information for all these people.
Right.
And when I Googled her name, I saw Benedict Cumberbatch's Sherlock just pop up.
Yeah,
but
of course.
that's not listed anywhere on her IMDb. Her IMDb, as far as it's concerned, is like she was popular in UFO and the Carry On films. She was in Doctor Who. No mention of Sherlock. No mention of Benedict Cumberbatch. It's very funny.
Man, we're gonna have to watch Sherlock at some point, aren't we?
Maybe. We'll see. He's not really in a prison most of the time.
Not for this project, but
Oh, sure. Yeah, a different one.
We're
Another
just-
podcast.
like you and I standing in for North America.
Of course.
Like maybe we can maybe
We can
for all-
finally deliver the justice that series deserves.
Well, really just like reckoning with ourselves of like what Western culture did by investing so much in the Moffat Sherlock project and what we reaped having sown that investment.
It's
in
true. It's true.
in tears and disappointment, you know.
It did have a
You
big
know what
impact.
I mean? Like that's
No, I know. I do. I do.
There's like an extraordinary amount of cultural
No, for sure.
energy that was wasted.
I mean, I don't know about ways. Like things did come of it. Did anything good come of it?
Okay.
But that energy went somewhere.
Sure, it turned into Doctor Strange.
It turned into Super Hulock and then Doctor Strange. Anyway,
I mean, okay. We'll reckon with that someday.
someday.
No promises. I already started a new podcast. I don't need to start another podcast right now.
Yeah, I'm trying to cut you back. You've eaten so many already.
I can't get enough.
Oh, he's back. Third host. We can still
I
learn
wonder
his
what
name.
my name is.
Find out by the end of the episode. So here's where I want to introduce this thing, because they introduce the ability to forecast Six's day to incredible precision, right?
They do.
Now, part of this is clearly that he just has a schedule he follows, but they also manage to show the cases where he'll deviate from that schedule, right? And this is, I think, again, if we were just watching the episode up to here, and also I'm thinking forward a little bit, there's a really interesting Clockwork Universe theme.
Sure.
Right?
Yes.
In terms of we get the thing in the very first scene of two saying they drugged her yesterday, timed it out so that she would fall at exactly the right moment.
Sure.
Right?
I think she's responding to the drug is responding to emotional distress or something like that, but it isn't exactly the right quantity for that kind of situation.
Yeah,
but yeah,
there's
there's a number of there's a really interesting back and forth between number 2 and Sherlock's mother, where they're talking about this process of like how it arrived at this thing. She talks about quantum permutation of like using the predictive behavior of other things to anticipate deviations in his own schedule. And then it talks about, he specifically asks for like, well, what's the percentage chance of all this stuff? And she's like, I don't know. The computer refused to give us that answer.
It's a very Douglas Adams line.
Yeah. In a better world, I think like this computer is the focus of the episode. Like, this is incredible. This is such a neat little bit of super science.
It is. It's cool. But I think more interesting, right? Like there's this whole thing about how predictable are things and to what extent can't things be predicted, right? Like even the fact that there's a central character who's a watchmaker, right?
Yes.
It's really interesting, this sort of notion of interlocking parts, which we can think about as we keep moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, number 2's whole plan here seems to hinge on producing predictable reactions out of number 6.
Yep.
Based on controlled inputs, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it actually harkens back to like Chimes of Big Ben, right? You know, the conversation there with number 2 of him saying that he imagines this like perfectly observable, perfectly controlled world. And they want to sort of expand their ability to do this sort of perfect prediction outwards from the village.
Totally. Absolutely.
So far on a first time watch, you're like, all right, there's a bunch of interesting stuff going on here, right? Where are we going?
Yeah, there are a couple other things I want to call out that are revealed here. Evidently, number 6 exercises in 4 distinct ways every morning. It kind of rules. Like we've gestured at his like being a Superman, super spy kind of individual, but like the amount of hustle he's got here. He does a lap around the village. He goes and does his gymnastics in the forest using a set that he has crafted himself, which I think we'll see him craft in a later episode or something like that.
It definitely comes up again.
He then goes skiing behind a motorboat to cool down.
Yeah, there's just a distant shot.
The idea of like recreational boating, knowing everything that we know about the village, is very, very like...
It's funny.
There's a lot, like, is Rover just doing patrols out there or something like that? And then does Kosho later in the day.
Yeah, of course, obviously.
Yeah.
Kosho,
the shining light of the episode.
Frank Maher, right, is like actually, he's the guy we've talked about him before. He's Patrick McGowan's stunt double, and he's like actually doing all this stuff, right? Yeah. So all the like cool spins and flips and stuff that like number 6 is supposedly doing, he's actually doing that, which is great.
Yeah.
Cool stuff. Okay, so then we get to this crux of this scene. We get number 8, aka Benedict Cumberbatch's mom. That's how she's credited. It's wild. He wasn't even born yet.
Talk about activity prognosis.
Going up to number 2 and saying, okay, here's the schedule. They like tune in later on, so he's already gone through most of this, right? We see a brief intercut here where he learns what jamming is, which I want to talk about more in just a second.
Absolutely. There's a great bit where number 2, again, just doing a really, really good job, activates the computer console with the heel of his foot.
Yeah.
He's got like his feet kicked up and he's leaning back in his chair and he just taps one of the buttons with his foot. It's real good.
Yeah, in the Columbo episode, we talked a lot about like Patrick McGowan as a villain being a cool villain. This is a pretty cool number 2. Darren Nesbitt's pretty cool.
Yeah, he's slick.
He's got that like 60s, 70s kind of like, big rimmed glasses, hipster kind of cool guy vibe.
Totally. I could see Jason Schwartzman playing this character.
Totally. And then we get to this bit of, number 8's reading this out, and number 2 says, he's going to buy candy? That's ridiculous. He hates all manner of sweet things or enjoyment.
Everyone knows that number 6 hates candy.
It's in his file. And then we get what honestly, it feels like a comedy scene.
It does. Why wouldn't you play this as comedy?
I don't know. But there's number 36, this old lady who must have her sweets. Oh, I can't wait for tomorrow.
I can't go a day without my sweets.
It's so much. Why is it like this?
I'll die.
This is Grace Arnold, who, is credited as the old sweets lady, which is crazy. In 1940s and 50s, she had like bit parts in films, not a big deal. And then we have the stall holder, number 200 something, I couldn't read, Arthur White, who's best known as recurring police archivist, Ernie Trigg in A Touch of Frost, which is a great name.
A touch of what?
A Touch of Frost.
Touch of Frost.
Yeah. Police procedural.
Does it star like a character? Yes, it does.
Yeah, exactly.
A series stars David Jason as Detective Inspector William Edward Jack Frost, an experienced and dedicated detective who frequently clashes with his superiors.
Yep.
Wow, can you imagine a police detective who doesn't get along with his superiors? That's crazy.
I mean, we didn't get to it in our Columbo episode. Go listen to our bonus Columbo episode. But there is an episode where Columbo takes down his boss, which is fun.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Really gives him the business.
Yeah. He does the classic Columbo. He gets him. Anyway, so there's this whole, I don't know. This scene is so weird because they're playing it so straight. They like want you to feel bad for this old lady who has to have her sweets. There's no notion that she's otherwise.
Number 6 buys her the candy.
Since when? This is the first of many moments of number 6 doing things in this episode that don't make any sense to me in terms of following the character of number 6.
It's like a completely different guy.
It's bizarre. We can talk about it more at the end of the episode in terms of like what do we think of all this, but like it's ridiculous. So I jumped ahead because I wanted to get to this scene so much. I want to talk about the old lady and her sweets, but let's talk about jamming.
Yeah, please.
So we have this artist who is number 118, who is also
sorry, just a little bit more scene setting.
Sorry,
so he is number 6 is going about his morning. He's done 8 different types of aerobics.
Yep.
He's done stretched. He's done corpse pose. He's all relaxed.
Yes.
And he goes to the old folks' home to play a game of chess. And then while he is there, he poses for a portrait. And the person painting his portrait is the one talking about this stuff.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So this is Charles Lloyd Pack, who was a film actor and television star. And notably, he showed up in our favorite Adventures of Robin Hood with Derwent the Joiner.
Hey.
Tying it all together. So he explains what jamming is, which is honestly a pretty good idea in the village, right?
Yeah.
You end up with, this gets us back to like, M's complaints about like, why isn't everybody reporting everything, right? Well, it turns out some people are, supposedly. This will never come up again. But the idea of jamming is that you basically just report false plans, right? You report false plans about people escaping, but also sabotage and things like that. Mm-hmm. And
it's sort of you could call it like overwhelming with information.
Totally.
But it's typically positioned as like a counter movement or an insurrectionary movement as opposed to like an authority figure overwhelming with broadcasts and stuff like that. It is typically a form of protest or a social movement or something like that.
Yeah, there's a very similar concept for real life sort of counterculture people in like the Fluxus like arts scene. So this is not like a... Sorry?
What is the Fluxus art scene?
Oh, Fluxus. Fluxus is great. I'm going to double check that I have the right thing. Yeah, Fluxus Games. Yeah, we got here. Cool. So Fluxus artists were this collective of artists. They included like Yoko Ono is perhaps one of the most famous ones. But they did a bunch of what we would later call basically experimental art and specifically experimental game design. So you might have heard of like Yoko Ono's what's it called? The one where it's all white pieces on chess, right? I'm not going to remember the name. I'm being such a bad game scholar right now. I didn't think I was going to talk about this today, so I didn't think about it ahead of time. Right, white chess set. So like this is a famous example of like this sort of experimental game. But they did a bunch of these. A bunch of them were like much sillier physical things like playing football on stilts, right? It sort of has like a very Kosho vibe, honestly, right?
A
It's
little
very
bit
similar
of
to
a
that.
Dadaist kind of
Yes,
feel.
it definitely comes out of there, but it was very popular in like New York. So there's this notion of it like post World War II, sort of taking the banner of these like Dadaist artists and like bringing it into like the new hegemony of like America being the prime, cultural thing in the world.
Right. Okay.
Anyway, so there's jamming. I like the idea of jamming a lot. I like the idea that there's
And sorry. What is the context of jamming in the village for people that haven't seen the episode?
the concept of jamming is that like this is going to be a way to fight back against the wardens, the people who are in control of the village, right? Because you're basically making them waste time having to investigate things that are not really happening.
Right. Escape attempts, sabotage attempts, plans to do things that would disrupt the village, except that you're not actually doing those things. You're
Right.
disseminating information covertly, intending for it to be intercepted and force them to waste resources, preventing things that were never going to happen in the first place.
Right. And the artist number 118 says, that used to be how it worked, but now they just have people on a big list. And they say, if you're on the list, we're just not going to investigate things you say.
Right.
Which will come up again later. He also reveals that the portrait he was drawing of number 6 is just like a series of abstract shapes.
It's really good. I really like that portrait.
It's really good. And number 6 says,
picture and a good bit.
yes. And number 6 says, a perfect likeness, which is very nice, right? Like, honestly, you can tell even if Patrick McGowan was against this being a comedy episode, it has been written as a comedy episode.
Yeah, kind of.
So I wanted to bring up jamming because I want to talk about jamming more broadly, right?
Sure.
So clearly this is one of the cases where, timeline shenanigans, you mentioned we should have a sound bite or something for this, but like these people didn't have any context for the rest of the series. They're coming up with what could be a good idea, right? But we have not seen any hint that there is any other like organized resistance in the village before this episode, and they will not show up again, right? Annette Andre's character number 50, her dad number 51, not going to reappear. And that feels weird, right?
It does. It's super weird. One of the things that we've been looking at getting ready for the show is scripts that weren't produced. And one of them has like this concept of like an organized group of people who are always like looking for escape attempts and organizing things. And part of what jumped out to me about that was like, oh, it's interesting that there's not more of that within the show, given what we know of the village and the people that are in it. And yet
Totally.
here it is for a flash, for just the briefest of moments. We get this really interesting, really considered view of it that just doesn't get picked up or reintroduced or leveraged in any real way. I mean, in fact, the central conceit of the episode almost doesn't really depend on it in any way.
Yeah, I think there's a couple interesting things here besides this that it doesn't reappear. So one, we don't see any jammers besides number 50 and number 51, Monique and her dad, right? And so to some extent, I'm wondering, was there anybody else?
Right? Yeah.
Is it just those two? And did they basically be like, well, we nearly got ourselves killed or whatever, so we're done after this? Or were they just killed, right?
Sure. I mean, I have a thought about that.
Yeah, more on that later.
Sure.
And then the other thing that I wanted to bring up here was, is this even real? Is this even like, were there really, like, I believe that number 50 and number 51 think that they were doing this jamming thing.
Sure.
Did anybody else?
So
did anybody else?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
My answer is no.
Yeah.
I think that based on our reading of the show, we're taking it as it lies and interpreting as best as we're able. I think we have to think that the authorities in the village, based on who they've brought on board, both as wardens and as prisoners, the methods they have used, the ways that they have kept everyone occupied, and the way they have dealt with troublemakers when they do appear, suggests that there is no real organized resistance of any kind above and beyond what we see number 6 doing. I think 50 and her, is it 50?
50 and 51, yeah.
Yeah, I think 50 and 51 had to have been deliberately brought here for this plan that were either selected because they were intended, because they already had a history of doing this sort of thing, and so could be counted upon to begin provoking this kind of resistance, even if it was just the two of them, or were given the idea and goaded into it in some way.
And in some extent, that reading fits really nicely with like the themes of like this clockwork organization, right? They can plan so far in ahead. I agree. I don't think this is real. And I think the major reason I don't think is real is in Patrick McGowan's little like write-up little story Bible. We keep calling it that, but it's like 3 pages or something. It's not that long. There's no mention of this, right? I don't think Patrick McGowan, when he imagined the village, imagined any resistance outside of number 6.
No, of course not.
Yeah. More on that later. Sure. Anyway, so I think we can, we spent a long time on this, but I think that, this is sort of the meat of the episode of what's going on, what's not going on. But from here, we get Kosho. Hopefully you don't want to spend too much time on this.
I mean, thankfully for you, one, you don't have a co-host that is super excited about about Kosho in the same way that I am.
Right.
So there's no one for me to review.
I'm super excited.
Ah, there he is.
I love sport.
This is nothing. And unfortunately, it's just a lot of the same footage.
Literally, yeah.
It's literally a bunch of the same footage, and the problem... And I'm not going to regale you with how Kosho works all over again, but the way that it works makes it very difficult for someone to score a point.
Yes.
Because he could just jump away, and most of the footage is just someone jumping away.
Yeah. This is Gary Crampton, who he's fighting most of the time, except when he's literally fighting Basil Hoskins number 14.
Right.
They use so much more footage from that episode in here than they did in that episode. It's ridiculous. They really thought they had something.
I mean, if you're going to record B-roll, it might as well be Kosho B-roll.
Yes. But we get number 100 for the first time here, right? He was dropping off the watch, the broken version of the watch. Number 100 or number 100, as they like to say, is played by Mark Eden, whose actual name is Douglas John Malin. He was best known as a villain in this ongoing series, Coronation Street. It's a soap opera, but he's generally a television and film star. I think he does a perfectly fine job. They notably do have him in a very similar, in fact, I think it might be the same make, it's just in like a different color of like the hairpiece that they have Darren Nesbitt in. All 3 of our main baddies in this episode have the same sort of hairpiece. It's very funny they did this for just this episode.
Yeah, there's I think Mark Eden does a perfectly fine job. I think he suffers from the fact that there's almost too many village wardens on screen in this episode.
There definitely are.
In instances where in the past we would have had, okay, there's number 2, and then number 2 has like a little henchman that it is working with him. That would have been Mark Eden. And unfortunately, we have, like, as we mentioned in the summary, there's 2 number 2s that we have to contend with. And then there's also like this other host of other wardens to help out with. And while it's neat to have that many people that get to have a scene that shows them off, like we said in Hammer into Anvil, we really appreciated like all the different villagers having their own individual moments. Totally. Mark Eden, I don't think ever really has a scene where he gets to stand out in a particular way. Like he doesn't have any dialogue in this Kosho scene, and he has very few real moments to like really get colored in as a character in that way. I think almost if we didn't have the purple suit jacket, that it would be difficult to pick him out from a crowd.
Yeah. I mean, so they gesture at the idea that he is like an expert at manipulating villagers to go along with plans like these.
Right. This whole scheme that number 2 seems to be implementing is being conducted by number 100.
I just sent this over to Brendan, but I literally for this episode made a graph to try to track everybody.
Oh my God.
I was trying to wrap my head around it because there's so many players in this episode.
Yeah.
It's, it definitely could have used, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 even fewer characters just to make things work a little better.
Probably. Thank you for including the phone as one of these characters.
Yeah, well, more on that later.
Yeah.
So he hands over the watch, the broken watch. He swaps it out. 6 immediately goes to the watchmaker, right? Where he almost instantly discovers the device.
Yeah, because it's just right there, because he's just working on it.
Well, and because the watchmaker was clearly told by Mark Eden's character, number 100, to like leave it out for 6 to find, right? Because we get that little bit at the end, which is interesting. Right,
he's hiding in there. Yeah.
Yes, because number 51, the watchmaker says, like, wait, why do we have to have them figure it out? Like, you need to explain to me, because clearly he didn't. why do we need them to know?
What the episode is?
Nobody knows. Nobody in or out of fiction knows the plot of this episode. Mm-hmm. Mark Eden's character, number 100, right, says that, like, it's important to, like, confuse them with the amount of information, basically.
It's working. We're getting jammed.
Yeah, we're being jammed. Whoa. Maybe it's deeper than we thought. Mm-hmm. But it is interesting, right? Because this is, again, somebody in fiction telling someone else or believing that 6 is aligned with the Wardens.
Sure, yes.
Which is clearly what number 51 has been led to believe. Mm-hmm. So there's a little bit of a scene here, which is kind of interesting. It's literally our only case where, number 22, who is, in this case, number 2's assistant, who is played by Mark Burns, who is the lead in House of the Living Dead, which is fun. He had a small role in 2007 Stardust. But this is like his only scene, really. I guess he has 2. But like he and number 2 are watching this, and number 22 is like, well, this could work, whatever it is. The plan we haven't been told. Uh-huh. And 2 insinuates that all he needs is for number 6 to come and warn him. So this is the first time where we're getting, this is the goal of the episode. Right. We need 6 to warn 2 of this incoming assassination plot. That's what everything's apparently like leading up to. After that, he gets to take his bows, right? He gets to say he succeeded.
Correct.
So up until this point, again, you could be like, okay, I don't fully understand it. They're clearly going to reveal more later. They don't, about what's going on here. But like, there's a clear, everybody is working towards specific things, right?
Whatever this is, I can't wait for it to be unveiled.
Yeah, definitely about to happen.
Yep.
So then we get number 6 and Monique, number 50, meeting back up. This bit doesn't really matter.
This is one of like 4 times when they meet for coffee.
Yeah, they must be so over-caffeinated. No wonder number 6 was about to have a panic attack.
Yeah.
But they decide to go back to the watchmaker's place, where the best bit of this, I mean, it's obviously the plotting is just sort of tortured, right? The fact that we have to go away to have a conversation to come back is just, it's not great. But the fact that number 51, the watchmaker, calls number 50 Monique is kind of incredible. Because this doesn't happen in The Prisoner, right? Like 6 does it. Sure. 6 calls people like Dutton, right?
Well, I think particularly with like the young ladies that wind up getting identified for us, like Nadia, and what was Jean Moreau's name in Schizoid Man.
Did she get a name?
Yeah.
I have to look at my list, look at my notes. It's been so long since Schizoid Man. That was episode 5. Can you believe it?
Allison.
Yeah, you're right. So you're right. The women often do get names, but it's usually number 6 getting to know their name.
Sure. Yes.
It's atypical. Like, it's not like number 6 starts calling her Monique.
Oh no, not at all.
In fact, this is the only time.
I don't think he calls her at all.
No, he doesn't speak to her.
Yeah.
So this is the only time that it's going to be said, and it's really interesting, right? Even the fact that they brought in a like father-daughter duo, is really interesting.
Yeah, this is kind of what led me to my theory of like, oh, they delivered these 2 specifically for this purpose, in the same way that we can imagine that like, oh, a lot of these people were brought to the village for a very particular reason, even if that reason was relatively minor, as part of the intricacies, the clockwork, if you will, of getting all of these things to fit together in order to get number 6 to do a particular thing.
Yeah.
We specifically brought Old Sweets to the village and took her candy away in the middle of the night.
Oh, I didn't mention it. I should have mentioned it. So number 51 is Martin Miller. He's actually a Czech Austrian character actor. He played a bunch of eccentric doctors, often comedic, which again, maybe this episode should have been a comedy.
Maybe. I mean, again, a lot of the number twos that we've most appreciated are the ones that have great comedic timing, right?
Yeah, totally. I don't know. There's a real feeling of like Patrick McGoohan like keeping his hand on this episode as it's like desperately reaching towards comedy.
Right. Like, I think a lot of the things that we're gesturing at, like the poor quality of the direction given to actresses, or the elements of comedy that are interwoven, the script elements maybe not like tying together quite well in a way that should have been caught earlier, is stuff that we have seen before. I think it just really shows like the production being as strained as it is.
Totally. Yeah, but also like I do like to imagine a version of this episode which just went like full on farce, right?
Sure, totally.
That because it is sort of a weirdly, we talked about timeline shenanigans a lot, but I think a bunch of the other episodes we can fit together a lot more neatly than this. This one really stands out as being bizarre in terms of the timeline for a few reasons. The biggest one we'll get to shortly. And like, if it was just a farce episode and it was a weird, like unclear if this is really happening, but it's like a comedy playing out the same beats in The Prisoner, I would have really enjoyed that kind of episode.
You're leading me to... I'm thinking about my proposed fix for this episode, but I'm going to hold on to it a little bit later.
Oh, I can't wait to hear that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so here's where we get the scene, right? With everything's been building up to. Number 6 goes to number 2.
Right.
We see number 2 preparing just before it in terms of like asking all these cameras, are you ready? Asking if the audio is ready, right?
Yeah, this is something I wanted to call out too, where like in the very first scene where number 50 interrupts number 6's sleep, number 6 makes a great show of like, oh, well, they're watching and listening to me at all times anyway. So I'm just going to speak to them as if they are here because they are in effect listening to me the entire time. Which, establishes that he's been in the village for a while at this point.
Definitely.
But this idea of number 2 calling particular attention to like, oh, let's make sure we've got everything recording in my room or something like that was peculiar. Maybe even more peculiar knowing what it is that it's building to. But it's like, yeah, of course we're recording your office. We're always recording your office. That's it. I did think the camera of like showing the camera itself looked nice. So
yeah. And it's also nice because like in the very last episode, Hammer into Anvil, right? We did all this stuff about, well, they're watching, right?
Sure.
We know they're watching. We know they're listening, and like here it is.
Yeah, I guess it affirms what we thought, so that's good.
It is nice, right? And it's even more like, okay, Hammer into Anvil's number 2 sure was left out in the cold if he didn't know
that's true.
Bit of the wall that shows where the camera is. Anyway, so this is really the only number 2, number 6 sort of like back and forth in this episode.
Also,
right? This scene.
Yeah, I think this is the only real until the very end. This is really the only time that these two really engage.
Right.
It's also halfway through the episode. Like, we're 30 minutes into the runtime at this point.
Yep.
It has really and truly just been a lot of people just like talking to one another back and forth.
Yep.
No, that's not true.
Yeah.
There was one Kosho match. One friendly, non-murderous Kosho match.
And all that exercising, those action scenes.
Sure, that's true.
But yeah, I like this. It's a classic number 2, number 6 back and forth.
It is.
It's funny even in the first run of it that you can see how number 2 is sort of unusually asking number 6 to repeat himself, right? Which happens all the time in a real conversation, but not on TV, right?
Right.
Because people are expected to just hear someone else, right? But otherwise, sort of, it's like a nothing scene until the reveal of what was going on in that scene later on.
Right. Should we talk about why number 6 wants to stop this in the first place?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
His claim is that he wants to prevent the assassination of number 2.
Yes.
Because the people in charge of the village will commit violent reprisals against the people of the village. And so he doesn't really care about the life of this number 2 whatsoever. He wants to protect the innocents who weren't involved from being punished for what one person might do.
Yeah, sure. So notably, it is Monique who brings this up to begin with.
Right.
She's the first one in one of these many coffee dates they have.
Yeah.
To say there will be reprisals, right? There's this whole bit we just went past because it doesn't really matter, of her going like, "How did you know?" And him being like, "What?" And she's like, "He's my dad," and him go like, "I don't know, my watch was broken."
Yeah.
But yeah, he just accepts this is true for some reason,
despite the fact that so many things despite the fact that he, number 6, literally top of the malcontents list.
Yeah.
Has literally escaped the village before, done all kinds of things. At this point, if we're to take the series order as canon, has destroyed the previous number 2.
Yeah.
And never, ever, not once, had any action taken against him whatsoever.
Yep. And you could dig this back to like A, B, and C as well, right? In terms of like taking down that number 2. Right. Or like in Free for All, where he like seizes control of the village briefly, right? Like he gets flogged. Nobody else is punished for this. It's ridiculous.
Okay, so why is he actually doing it then?
So there are fan theories about this. Mm-hmm. The most common, one of the most common fan theories is actually that number 6 is drugged. Because
they just omitted all of the bed lamp flashing scenes.
Yeah, exactly.
Just accepted that it's a prisoner episode. You get it. You know what's going on.
Yeah, a bunch of the orderings, like the alternative episode orderings, put this as part of what's sometimes called like the torture arc, or like the like breaking them down arc.
Yeah.
And the idea is that
Great
like
Island.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but before the Phantom Troop, confusingly. Yeah, number 6, the whole idea is that like the village is basically torturing number 6 and like steadily trying to break him down. Right? Because there's a series of episodes that are basically doing that, right? We've already seen some of them. And so their notion is that like the sort of manicness we see from 6 and like this first scene when he gets woken up, and also in the last bit, right, where he's like fighting number 100 and he is saying some real nonsense. Like this is all signs that like 6 is not in his right mind.
Sure.
Right. I don't really buy that.
No. No, I think my feeling here is that, again, they know what they're doing. They have brought people in with very specific intention. They have coaxed people in particular ways, and they have brought people in to do and say particular things. They are doing specific things to provoke a specific reaction in number 6. Number 50 uses the word assassinate really specifically. Not we're trying to kill number 2, not we're trying to murder number 2, not we're trying to overthrow number 2. Assassinate. Yep. And I have to think that if number 6 is acting in this way, it is because there is something about his programming. There is something about the way that he is wired that, whether it is the word assassinate or maybe even more insidiously, it is simply his love of order, his love of structure, even if it is not the correct structure. To say that there is something insidious and awful about doing things the way that you are doing them, as opposed to the things that I am doing, the correct one righteous man, that requires me to maintain the status quo at all costs until such time as I replace it.
Totally.
Rather than letting this Czech clockmaker do something that might actually produce some kind of change.
Right. Yeah. Because notably, number 6 never tries to just like get a hold of a weapon and kill a number 6 or a number 2, right?
Sure. No. He absolutely does not. But to that point, it's interesting that as much as he doesn't want this to happen, he also literally has the bomb in his hands and does not do anything with it. Yeah. So we have to reckon with that also.
Yeah. I mean, this is part of, so I wrote this down in my notes of like, what does the prisoner think about violent protest? right?
Yeah.
In many ways, Six like espouses a lot of like liberal ideas, and by that I don't mean like modern notions of like American liberalism or whatever, right?
Not
I mean liberalism. Yeah, what I mean is like classic liberalism in terms of like the rights of the individual.
Yes.
Right. And he espouses a lot of these things, and there's some gesturing at like him maybe not believing in society at all, but like he does go to the city council in free for all, so there is some notion of him being willing to play the game, right? So I'm with you. I'm with you on this general read in terms of what's going on here, and I think that more broadly, Number 6 just doesn't believe in like direct action, right? He doesn't believe in violent action to be able to make things happen.
Sure.
Right? Everything he's doing is like, and part of this goes back to Patrick McGoohan more broadly around he's not going to use guns, right? Et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And in these prior episodes where he like takes out a number 2, he does so by like, in sort of the metaphorical equivalent of the superhero who happens to set the villain up to like fall to their death so that like gravity kills them, right? Yeah. It's just the situation they put themselves in that happens to
it's
take
their
them
fault,
down.
not mine.
Exactly. And this is really interesting when we think about when the prisoner is being made, right? Because this is the 1960s. And, this is before the Troubles, right? So we're not thinking about Ireland right now. Maybe to some extent you're thinking about Ireland, but it's before that really kicks off. What I think you're really thinking about is the American Civil Rights Movement.
Absolutely.
Which means that what I think that the writers of this episode, and maybe Patrick McGoohan, if he was on board that part of it, are thinking, well, we're not like those radicals, the Black Panthers.
Sure. Or heaven help us, the Soviets.
Exactly. Yeah. Right? We're going to do things the right and proper way.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
They even directly say this to number 51 of like, not this way, 51 does this whole thing.
Who is very deliberately cast as this like old Central European individual, right?
Yep. Who'd be willing to take violent action, right? Who says like number 51's right. He's saying we've been taken here. We've been put in this prison against our will. I'm going to do a thing they can't ignore.
Right. I'm going to do something that, if nothing else, will wake other prisoners up to the reality of the situation they're in.
Yeah. He's a bit of an accelerationist, but he's got the spirit. Versus number 6 and Monique, who are like, no, don't do it this way.
Please, where will we get coffee?
Do a silent protest. Chain yourself to Rover. It's bad. It's not good. It's really one of the worst looks at number 6 as like revolutionary.
Well, I don't think I've ever imagined him as revolutionary, right? Like,
sure.
I think part of what I want to get at here is that when it comes to number 6's goal of escape the village, bring these people
and come back and destroy it.
And come back and destroy it. It is not, no matter what he might say in terms of a servant of the public good or defender of the innocent here and there. Mm-hmm. It is in service of, you can have whatever it is that you want to have, but leave me out of it. My rights and my freedom trump everything.
Totally.
If you do get in my way, then I will move heaven and hell to bring you down, so that you can't do it to me again.
Totally. Yeah, there's a bit of this, in the most cynical version of this. When number 6 learns about the bomb, you could just imagine him going, oh, shit. I'm involved now.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, he could have just done his usual, go get a coffee on the hillside by himself and ogle somebody.
Sure.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So, okay. We get a Fenella Fielding. I wanted to call it out.
We do. Let's go.
So 6 and Monique, having failed to convince the watchmaker, and 6 having failed to convince 2, go get some more coffee about it. And they get the announcement from Fenella Fielding that there will be an annual appreciation day.
Yep.
Which, like, bullshit. No, there won't. This is not a thing.
Matthew, what do you appreciate?
You're appreciating number 2, of course.
Yeah, of course. You appreciate our leaders and everything they do to rule us benevolently.
Yeah, she says, your Citizens Council also wishes to make it clear that attendance at the ceremony will not be compulsory. Special non-attendance licenses may be obtained at the town hall.
That's good.
It's good. There's funny bits in this episode. Lean in. I don't know. Rover also shows up in the script, but not the episode, probably because of budget stuff that we've already talked about. And this is when we get 6.
What if we were appreciating Rover? Thank you, big dog.
That's what they were doing in the cave. They were just appreciating Rover. Yay. It's like all those images that people post occasionally of like dogs thinking that parades are for them. But it's real. Everybody just lines up in the middle of the street and goes, "Yay, Rover!"
Yeah. And like any dog, Rover gets too excited and kills several people.
He would.
Yeah.
It's for enrichment.
Yeah.
Bless his heart.
You got to socialize.
Yeah. So what's interesting to me is that you're talking about like the editing of this episode is sort of not really working, right? Like we just sort of cut to in the dead of the night, Six and Monique find the bomb.
There's a lot of jumps where it's like, all right, I guess we're here now.
Yeah. And you could read in that they're going, well, we need more evidence.
Yeah.
For number 6 or number 2 to believe us.
I guess he already went and warned number 2.
And what's wild is they discover the bomb here. They know it's the seal, and they don't do anything about that.
It's this big medallion.
Yeah.
It's
got the penny farthing on it.
With the penny farthing on it.
Yep.
That we are told number 2 wears for all affairs of state, despite this
Obviously.
being episode 12 or whatever.
Yep.
And I'm flabbergasted trying to just describe what's going on. They actively want this to stop, and they find the bomb, and they're like,
"Yep,
dang, I guess it is real." If only we had a spy or something like that could sabotage this.
Number 6 was It wasn't even a spy. Is there anything going on here?
That's true. Couldn't he have just said, dang, if only I hadn't been, looks directly at camera, a government functionary for several years.
Oh my God.
Who exercises like crazy.
Yeah.
I gotta convince everyone that I'm a spy.
Right. And not even that, right? This bomb has been set up to only go off when the thing is hit. Just take the device that activates the bomb. What are you doing? This is what Leorio would be like if he was in the village. He'd be like, it's just a bomb of some kind. Some sort of bomb.
Yeah.
I'm a kind-hearted miser.
Okay, here's the other thing about this bomb.
Yeah?
We live in 2025.
Correct.
And like all people in 2025, we've seen enough media. We've been exposed to enough culture.
Yep.
That we know in our hearts the size of C4 and the proportional explosion that it will create. This is an incredibly big bomb. It's like so big. It would take out the whole chessboard.
Take out all of number 2's house. It's just gone now.
This is bigger than the amount of C4 you plant in Snake Eater. It's ridiculous. Man. Now, I was watching this episode with my wonderful mother.
Uh-huh.
And she pointed out to me that, like, friend of the show, shout outs, real ones know, that back then, people didn't have the appreciation for plastic explosives the way that we do now. And so back then, all you knew was like stick of dynamite from a Western.
Sure.
Boris Badenov, big round bomb.
Yep.
And so you had to have something that looked big enough to be like, oh, okay, that's a bomb.
A problem.
And so I'm willing to wave this aside. But and we'll get to this later, all these people are standing really close to one another at the time that the bomb was supposed to go off.
Including Darren Nesbitt number 2.
Including the guy that's behind the bombing. Yeah. My God.
You will get to it.
You know what? Maybe we've just answered this. Maybe we've just answered. Number 6 opens up the bomb, sees how much C4 is there, goes, well, that'll solve itself. Closes it back up. That's gotta be it, right? That's gotta be it.
I don't think so. I think number 6 is going, one dead warden is a price too much to pay for freedom. It's salute. It's the meme of number 6, like as the soldier standing in front of the bed with number 2 in it, and he's got all the slings and arrows in his back.
That's right.
Oh, jeez Louise. Man. Anyway, so
that
equipped with this. Yeah, that scene just ends, and number 6 goes back to number 2's house.
It says, "I found the bomb. It's real."
And here is where we get what the episode thinks is its big twist, which is that there's a new old number 2. This guy's played by Andre von Gissinghem. He was a stage and television star. He was in The Saint. And he makes all kinds of bonkers claims. He says that he's the actual number 2, it's not clear exactly what that means. But he implies that all the other number 2s have just been like his stand-ins, his substitutes in the intervening time that we've seen so far.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Now, it could just be read as, I've been gone for, these last 3 number 2s, the 2 that we see on the, the video fake and the Darren Nesbitt number 2. Right? That's possible.
Yeah.
But it is a weird thing.
He became number 2 and then got sick and so had to call in. But they still needed a number 2, so they brought in some rotating number 2s. And now he got better, so he's going to finish his term. Or something like that.
Something like that. So there's fan theories here that he might have been the number 2 during Many Happy Returns when 6 is away from the village for weeks.
Okay.
And that he was then gone since Many Happy Returns, and he's returned now. So he's referring to all the ones in his absence as being the stand-ins here. I don't really buy that. I think it's
a lot of lifting there.
There's a lot of lifting, right?
Yeah.
One of the things we talked about it before. The Prisoner is a show you do have to do some lifting for, because there's all these issues in terms of the ordering and things like that. Mm-hmm. And things not, them clearly not having any sense of continuity at the time.
Right.
Or not the same sense we have now, I guess I should say. But the thing I don't like about this episode is that for all the other episodes, you can usually do that in a sentence. Here's one extra idea that if you introduce it, now makes this episode make a ton more sense.
Right.
Right? For this one, you have to do so much work.
Yeah.
You have to imagine there's this whole other short story that occurred off screen that explains everything we're seeing here.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work.
It's challenging.
Yeah. So here's where we get, the prisoner
and
revealing.
Here's what really gets, sorry, just as a coda to what you said there. A lot of times when you do that for an episode of The Prisoner, if you introduce one small idea, then everything is and that makes everything fit together really well. Here, yes. If you write a short story to make everything work, the juice still isn't worth the squeeze.
No, it's not. It's not.
It's not like any of these single performances is really knocking it out of the park, or it's introducing a really cool idea about the world, or gives us new insight into number 6 and his past, or how he feels about everything. It's just sort of it turns out he loves the status quo and hates violence.
Anyway, so here's where we get
the power of video editing.
Yeah, warning us of the dangers of deepfakes, right?
If only it had been Nesbitt in funny nose and glasses.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Again, lean into the comedy. But it's here that we get.
This. I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you, but
no, it's fine. Go for it.
This ploy is so absurd that it makes number 6 mad in the episode. Why not just treat it as the farce that it is? It's so dumb.
Yeah, so we get 2 fake number 2. So, okay, let's just set this up. Number 6 shows up. Old number 2 says, "I've been expecting you, number 6. You show up to every number 2 and you say they're going to die." And then he says, "I have video proof. Here's Darren Nesbitt." And number 6 was like, "Yeah, that happened."
Yep.
And he's like, but here's Tony Mendelsohn, who's uncredited. And here's Sheila Azah, who's also uncredited. And number 6 says, "I never did any of that."
Yeah, it's literally just everything that number 6 said to Nesbitt, but edited as if he is saying it also to these other number twos, as
Yep.
if they also had death threats against their lives that number 6 was warning them of.
Yep.
It's not especially convincing.
It's not. I mean, but also, I will get to this at the end, but there's a real sense of, is it supposed to be convincing?
Sure.
Right?
Yes.
Because number 2 certainly leaves this scene already questioning what's going on here. Right? And it's not going to be too much longer till he's fully bought into what's actually happening, big air quotes.
Wait, do you mean number 2 or number 6?
Old number 2, sorry, is what I was
Okay,
specifically
yes.
referring to.
The old new number 2.
Yeah. This is why I like old and young. I think that works slightly better. There's a couple interesting things here. So we get a couple scenes throughout this next little bit of Darren Nesbitt, young number 2, on the yellow phone, making jokes
He is
about
always
how
on
well
that
things are
phone.
going. He's always on that phone.
He is wasted on that phone. It is
He
so
is.
boring to listen to him be one half of a conversation, presumably with number 1, but we don't actually know.
We don't
and he's
know.
just
It's like,
saying over and over again, like, yeah, the plan's going great. I'm sure it's going to go fine. I'd stake my career on it.
duh, okay, boss. So yeah, he says dead. It's going to be going dead on schedule. You might
He
say
keeps coming up with puns.
he does. It's awesome.
It's going like
So-
clockwork. No. Boss?
So
Hello?
so none of this is in the script.
Oh, great.
Which means the director or Patrick McGowan or Darren Nesbitt or somebody was like, we really need more of Darren Nesbitt talking about how well things are going. Which is awesome.
I think more likely they just realized that he wasn't in the second half of the episode if they didn't
Sure.
do these things. And so they felt like, all right, well, we have to keep him on screen so everyone knows who the bad guy is.
Yep. It's but there's a
Where can
couple interesting.
We can't put him in number 2's room. Let's put him in the computer room, I guess. We've got that.
Yeah. Put him back at his desk. But there are a couple interesting things in those exchanges. And notably, you mentioned it's presumably number 1, but notably this is a yellow phone, not the big red phone,
It
right?
is,
Or not even
yes.
the small red phone. So that's interesting.
Yeah, and
more on
the
that in a minute.
supervisor answered it earlier,
Yes.
rather than number 2. Hey, what do
So-
you think the operations of the village are like when there's 2 number 2s active? How did this happen?
Yeah. I mean, so we talked about it before in terms of like when there have been these little like power plays behind the scenes with the wardens, right?
But never
and-
shared a number.
No. And we have seen like 2 versus 2A, 2B, et cetera with the city council, but again, like they're not important really.
Right.
I do think you can read some of the scenes, particularly the scene with number 2 and number 22, who's supposed to be number 2's assistant and will show up again in just a second for his second and only other scene of number 2 getting number 22 on side. So there's this little bit of like young number 2 is making a play, and he like not everybody is on board with that play.
So as in he arrived and said, you can start calling me number 2 already because I'm going to be number 2 anyway. You might as well make me number 2 now. And some people went along with it. And
Yeah,
so we
like-
have this 2 number 2s.
Yeah, so like number 28, right? Peter Swanwick is clearly on board with this number 2. He's taking direct orders from him. Number 100 is like his guy, right? But number 22 is a little bit more uncertain, right? He's talking about, well, this might work. And then I think we can see that, if we're being generous, we can see that paying off in this next scene.
Yes.
Of the old number 2 summoning him and saying, I'd like to see that footage that you faked. And number 22 going, that footage doesn't exist. And old number 2 having the quite good line about like, it's amazing that despite being here and not at the archives, you can tell me that it doesn't exist.
Yeah. There's some good dialogue in this episode for as much as I
There is.
critique it. There's another good line right after that where he says, by not explaining, you have explained everything perfectly. I understand everything
Exactly.
now.
Yeah, I mean, so like that's a nice little arc. Like we could draw it out, right? It doesn't really matter though, because immediately number 6 comes back.
He does come back again.
No motivation given for why he's back again, except the script
he
said.
just seems to be there.
And
Maybe
number
he dropped
2,
a plot critical item from out of his inventory in the room, and he had to come back in.
for the remainder of this episode, number 2 is the wettest, the most sweaty, and he only gets sweatier. It's incredible.
Hey, what's with the handle on his umbrella?
I didn't notice this.
It has like a weird like arm strap, as if it's
yeah.
It puts me in mind of like blood pressure measurement straps. Or
Oh
cuffs.
yeah, you're right.
I've
That's
never seen
bizarre.
anything like this.
Maybe they're just like trying to evoke like old people things.
I was wondering if like if this has a sword inside of it, like the one in Hammer into Anvil. Is this a cuff that you put on your wrist so your sword can't get knocked out of your hands?
That's pretty good. It's like a Wiimote.
Yeah, it's exactly like the Wiimote.
When number 2 is playing with his sword, he always throws it at the screen and breaks the lava lamp screen.
Did the lava lamp screen seem smaller to you this episode?
Yeah, it is definitely smaller.
Yeah, like it's broadcasting at the wrong resolution or something.
Yeah.
Things are not good in the village.
No, they're not. The two number 2s is really eating into the budget. You have to pay them both the same salary.
You do. Hey, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, what's up?
What's Plan Division Q?
Well, let's get to the end of the episode.
Okay.
My graph is really about me trying to figure this out, and I think I have it figured out.
All right.
Okay, so the most interesting line in this, right? This is the old number 2 going, oh, I never thought the leopards would eat my face, right? And for some reason failing to back out, or like failing to not have the seal, even though we've never seen it before. He says the seal is the ceremony, which is nothing.
Yeah, he's committed to going through with the ceremony, even though it will literally end in his explosion.
Yeah. But he says a really interesting line. He says, you never understood us, number 6. We never fail. Which is really kind of fun in terms of like thinking about how we've been thinking about all the prior episodes. Mm-hmm. Which is that so far the village hasn't failed.
Right.
Right? Anytime that the village has seemed to lose somebody, it's because they were intending to lose that person.
Yeah.
Right?
They always get what they want eventually.
Right. And I think that's kind of cool to have from this old number 2 who's clearly like, you know, senior enough that he knows how this is supposed to work, to the point where he immediately clocks on to what the actual plan is from one conversation. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I think that's a really cool line to think about going forward as well, in terms of like the rest of this episode, for example.
Sure.
Right. Did they fail, or was this actually something they wanted to have happen?
Right.
Then we hit Appreciation Day.
Yay.
We get the classic everybody walking through the village with big placards that have the 2 number 2's faces on them.
Yep.
Right? We get an MC. The MC is played by Michael Bilton, who is credited as the village counselor. He was a British sitcom regular. Things like To the Manor Born and Waiting for God. Waiting for God is great, by the way. But also Doctor Who and a lot of other British TV. So I think he does a fine job of being sort of, you know, a pompous MC for this event.
Yeah.
There's a bit more like the silliness here, and there's the funniest reveal, I think, is in this scene.
Are you talking about the monument?
Yeah, the monument.
Yeah,
it's
what does
incredible.
The monument say?
It just says achievement on it. It's so good. It's just like a marble block that says achievement. This is a Douglas Adams bit.
It not only says achievement and nothing else, but it's written in all lowercase like a millennial typed it out.
It's so good.
I love it. I desperately want a rock that says achievement of my very own.
You can have it as just a paperweight on your desk. Yeah. ITC Entertainment, that definitely still exists. Get on producing that merch, please. Anyway, so there's some action here, but it's sort of nothing, right? Like Monique and Six look around for her dad, who for some reason she couldn't just follow, and they see him obviously in the watchtower.
He's too Central European.
True.
Too wily.
He'll get you.
Yeah.
He's got a big bomb in one hand that they never show.
They spot the glint of his binoculars in the tower.
Yes.
They run up there. They subdue
they
him.
Sort of run up there, Brendan. They briskly walk.
They briskly walk. You can tell that it's not the two of them just from their body language.
No.
But they sort of briskly step up the stairs One at a time. No need to hurry. The man's
No
old.
need to hurry.
He made the button too hard to press. They take his toy away from him.
They do take his toy away from him. It's so funny because they literally show the seal of office going. It's like it's on old number 2. He could do it at any time.
He could. And again, he is literally like shoulder to shoulder surrounded by officials, including the young old number 2.
Yeah. Anyway, so they beat number 6 beats up this old man.
Here's for democracy.
The way that he responds as well. When number 51 responds, I just watched it again. When number 51 turns around and like just has the binoculars on and sees them just go like, ah! It's so good. He's oh man. So number 6, having beat this old man up.
I thought it was weird how number 50 started kicking her dad and then wouldn't stop kicking her dad.
He leaves him with Monique. Says Izzy's okay, so you know that he's a good guy because he cares about the man he's just beat up.
Yeah, I'll buy him a bag of sweets tomorrow.
And then number 2, young number 2, Darren Nesbitt number 2, who has revealed that his big funny glasses were a spy gadget the whole time. And
excuse me. He turns on the radio to his little pink jacketed number guy.
Yeah.
His number guy, and he says, "Is everything all right?" And number 100 says, "Everything's fine. Stop radioing me. Over. Stop radioing me. Over."
He's actually says stop worrying, but I do like the idea that he's just texting. But it is funny because, like, literally in the last scene where we saw young number 2, he was like, "Yeah, everything's going fine." Ha ha ha! Funny pun. And now he's like,
"Oh my god, I'm right next to a bomb."
Yeah, you think maybe he's a little nervous about being so close to the bomb.
And they're gonna put the bomb on me. Oh my god!
But then he's not nervous at all when the bomb's on him.
Not
anyway,
the slightest.
So number 100 goes.
Maybe he's immune to bombs.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. He's got one of those like original David Lynch Doom shields that's like a big polygon around him.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
Anyway.
You can only hit him with a very slow punch.
Yeah. Number 6 and number 100 get into a little bit of a fight.
A little bit of a fight, let me tell you.
It's lengthy. It's the longest. It's an incredibly long sequence for what it is.
So, not merely that, but in another one of the behind-the-scenes sequences, Mark Eden, who's playing number 100, reported that this was supposed to be a show fight, of the sort that we have seen on The Prisoner, where you make a big swing and then someone reels as if they got hit. Patrick McGowan, laid into him and, attacked him.
Started strangling him at one point,
Started
reportedly.
strangling him as part of the show. Yes.
Yeah. And this whole time he's saying things like, "I want you to confess," right? Which is nothing and completely dropped because in the script, the sequence is entirely different.
Great.
So in the script, there's a much shorter show fight. Number 6 grabs number 100 and drags him along because the idea is that he's going to put him in front of the village and be like, "You're going to reveal what was happening to everybody."
Which would kind of make sense because as far as everyone else is concerned, nothing has happened.
Right. And then Rover shows up and Rover kills number 100.
That'd be better.
Which is fast, which is so good, right? Because it's immediately oh no, this is what the village wardens want. They're tying up a loose end here.
Yes.
They don't want number 100 to still be around.
Yeah.
Anyway, old number 2 is so sweaty in this scene.
Yeah. He did have a bomb around his neck.
He did, but he looks like Gollum. Look at 47 minutes in. He looks haunted. And he doesn't even have the seal around his neck anymore.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Why did they do this? Why did the makeup people do this?
I mean, maybe they were also working too hard.
Or maybe they didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe they didn't know what the episode was about.
Anyway. Okay, so now we get to the silliest bit of the episode, which is number 6 shows up after the ceremony is done with the remote bomb thingy, deployment thingy. He hands it to number 2, old number 2, and says, "This is your passport. You can use this to escape." Number 2 says, "They're still going to kill me." He says, "Whatever, I don't care. Just don't let them kill you here," right? And then he spots young number 2, who sees this. Young number 2 moves to like take the seal off, right? And 6 instead grabs his hand and starts shaking it and starts like congratulating him on a good ceremony.
Terrific.
Why doesn't number 6 just go?
Like on the helicopter to leave?
Why doesn't he just leave?
Yeah, great question.
Right? Like everybody who's like, well, number 6 obviously tries to escape every episode. What are you talking about? Number 6 doesn't try to escape in like half the time. Less than that.
Here, he has not only maintained the status quo, but he has saved the life of a number 2.
Yes. And young number 2 is supposed to be furious according to the script. Doesn't have any lines here. It's just sort of like staring at Patrick McGoohan. I'm gonna. He doesn't even say "I'm gonna get you." Number 2's famous line.
Yeah, do they not know that you're supposed to end every episode by saying that? That's weird.
And then he does what? He squeezes in one more of his classic, taking his glasses off, putting his glasses back on, as he looks up into the sky and sees the helicopter going away. And that's the end of the episode. Oh, man.
And once again, the village has been kept exactly as it was before, thanks to...
The prisoner.
I'm the freaking prisoner, baby.
Okay, so let's talk about Plan Division Q. That's supposedly what this was, right? This is whatever this is. This is Plan Division Q, right?
Sure.
So here's my theory of what's going on. Based on, old number 2 saying we never lose, right? And this is actually a very common fan theory. For this one, the fans agree with me. They think the village was setting up number 6 to, thwart this assassination attempt.
Right.
As part of bringing him on side. Right?
This is the only way that any of this makes sense.
I think so, right? Which is to the extent that like other people agree with me. To be clear, right, in the earlier scenes where I've been, reading this in terms of number 6 as like gray hat hacker or whatever, like troubleshooter working for the village, that is not a super common fan theory. And this one, the fans agree, right? To the point where, again, like fans organize this as part of this like torture arc where the idea is that they're starting to use more and more extreme methods to try to bring number 6 on side, right? I think the thing that gets complicated about the plan, though, is that different people have different levels of information, right? So,
boy do they. Some of them are on this call.
So, young number 2, I think young number 2 knows...
number 2.
Yeah, Darren Nesbitt number 2. I think he knows what the whole plan is. Because I think that my reason for thinking that is that I don't really read him at the end as furious, because again, I don't think Darren Nesbitt knew what emotion he was supposed to be showing there. And so I read it more as like, I'm showing something that could be read as number 6 is furious, right? But it isn't actually indicative of like, I've failed, or I feel like there's a problem here, right?
Number 2 is furious.
Sorry, yes, number 2 is supposed to be furious. And this also fits in with his earlier conversations with whoever is on the yellow phone, where as soon as Darren Nesbitt's number 2 brings up like dead on schedule, whoever's clearly on the other side of the phone like berates him because he immediately backs off. He's like, "Oh no, just a funny joke, just me, the Joker." And so it feels like to me, exactly. How'd I get these? My father, old number 2. So to me, it's yellow phone, whoever is that, and young number 2, Darren Nesbitt, are on board with, we just need number 6 to get on side, and we want him to thwart this. We don't actually want this to happen. Right?
All I need is for him to warn me. That's all I need. Exactly,
which is why everything is just building up. As soon as 6 has warned 2 to try to save his life, they've won, as far as they're concerned.
Sure.
And he's not nervous at all through the rest of it. Like, it's basically a victory lap for him on these little side conversations until he's actually on stage with the bomb.
Right.
And then he gets nervous, not because he's like, why hasn't the bomb gone off? But because he's like, I really don't want this bomb to go off.
I hope number 6 does exactly what I predicted that he'd do.
Yeah. But I think that young number 2, I think has not brought in number 100 or number 22 on this. I think that number 22 and number 100 legitimately think that they're actually trying to kill old number 2.
I think that makes sense.
I think they probably are going to kill old number 2, like once he's off screen.
Oh, totally. They kill everyone.
They kill everyone. I mean, some people disagree with us because they don't show bodies regularly, but I'm pretty sure they just vaporize people whenever, right? Like in the helicopter, they could be like, all right, and lasered. He's dead now.
Just like that pigeon.
Just like the pigeon, right?
The
If they can
famously
track a
dead
pigeon, they can track a helicopter. Come on.
Yeah.
So that's why in the fight, number 100 is like desperately trying to flip the switch. And to the extent, then, that means that the village has to have a lot of confidence in number 6 to be able to like win that fight.
Sure.
Right? Or if they needed to, send Rover in.
I mean, there's every chance that the bomb simply wouldn't work for some reason or another, right? Like
It's really possible.
They provided a part to number 51 that 51 thinks is the real thing, but won't actually go off in some way or something like that.
Sure, but I mean, young number 2, Darren Nesbitt's nervousness seems real.
Oh,
and
sure,
maybe that's
absolutely.
just like, I want to make sure number 6 wins, but it does feel a little bit like I'm a bit concerned for my own life here, my own skin.
Yeah. I guess if you take what I just said to be true, then actually there's this one thing that whoever's on the other side of the yellow phone knows, but that young number 2 does not necessarily know.
Right. Whereas I think that Peter Swanwick's number 28 is fully bought in because he disappears from the episode, but he's like very on board with like the whole point of this is just to get number 6 involved.
Right.
Right. The point of this is not to betray old number 2, whereas number 22 certainly seems to think it is.
No, and I think you can chalk that up to 28 being an old hand at this point, right? Like he's been in the village, he understands how everything works, and he understands what the point of it all is. Whereas people that are new, that are being brought in, are kind of have surface level readings of what it is that goes on around number 6.
Right. And obviously we've already talked about it already, but like number 50, number 51 are clearly being used. They think this is all legit, right? It's unclear to me exactly what number 6 thinks, but he clearly thinks that he did well there at the end because he's very self-congratulatory.
As you know, it's a win for him as far as he's concerned.
And of course, Angelo, as always, knows everything because he's there in every scene where number 2 is talking about this.
Well, so he knows, if he knows everything, then that's that much more likelihood that the bomb was not real, that the threat was never there, because he's holding the seal until it gets presented to old number 2.
Is that true? I didn't even realize that.
Oh yeah, he's got it on a pillow.
Oh yeah, you're totally right. There he is. Oh god, he looks so good with the red pillow and the gold seal.
That's what the statue should have been. It should have still said achievement, but then it should have been just like a little head, Angelo's head on a rock, like an ancient Greek herm or something like that. But without the other parts of a herm, that would be suitable for television.
No. I mean, they do have all of those like busts, right, in the woods that have the cameras in them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's basically it. That's the only way I can make sense of this nonsense episode.
Plan Division Q.
Yep. Also, notably, Manchurian Candidate had just come out.
Oh, Manchurian Candidate.
Which is all about, if you're not familiar, right, somebody like being set up to do an assassination plot. Right. So I'm almost certain that what happened here is the writer of the episode saw that and was like, I could do one of those.
I mean, we've all been there.
Yeah, I mean, adaptation is the best form of flattery or whatever. Anyway, that's the episode. That's what happens.
All that happened.
That just happened.
Boy, oh boy.
Oh, man.
Matthew, what's your number 1 with a bullet for this episode? What's the single thing from It's Your Funeral? A good episode title. given the high concept of this thing. What's your standout performance, your shining light, your thing, your prop, your scene, your line of dialogue.
Yeah. I've got to give it to Darren Nesbitt. This episode is not good, but I think that Darren Nesbitt's just fun to watch on screen, even when he's given nothing, like the conversations with with the yellow phone. The way he's able to like play to the screen, the way he does like fun physicality stuff with the glasses, the way that he's using his feet, as you mentioned in the one scene, right? All this stuff is great. I think he did really well. I think it's a real shame that Darren Nesbitt like didn't become more famous than he did. Yeah. This is the most well-known thing he was ever in, which I think is a real shame because I think he's got some like real chops to him.
Yeah, excellent call. I have got to give it to Benedict's mom herself, Wanda Ventum. Number 8, the computer attendant. The concept of the activities prognosis machine is both pretty incredible and a little bit ridiculous. But I think her scene where she is basically bringing out the readings and delivering it to number 2 and justifying it and demonstrating its efficacy and why it's a useful tool is just played so well. It's entertaining. It's well composited, and she does a great job with it. Shout outs.
I completely agree. Well, Brendan, do you want to rate this episode?
I said at the very top, there's stuff in here. There's primordial material. Oh, you know what? No, before we rate this episode, really, this should have just been a fix. This should have been. Tell me about your episode fix.
This
should have been a recurring segment from the beginning of like, fix this show. If we did it better. No, that's presumptuous to think the prisoner needs any fixing whatsoever. Here's what I would do.
Yeah.
You brought up before the idea of farce. This idea of, is this even really happening?
Yeah.
I really like the idea of a plot that you are trying to fix with some sort of an explosive ending that goes bad. But what's this? Another opportunity to try and do things differently? This should have been a time loop episode.
Okay.
This should have been an episode that ends over and over and over again in a ridiculous explosion that takes out everyone, that sends number 6 back to the morning where he's being woken up by number 50. And until he can figure out a way to break the loop, it keeps happening over and over and over again. And that is what I would have liked to have seen. And in so doing, discovers the existence of the activities prognosis machine, which is what's causing the loop to begin with.
That's cool.
It knows what's happening because all of this has happened before.
That's interesting.
Making the loop happen.
That's interesting.
And it ends with my favorite thing to see number 6 doing, which is ripping the guts out of a machine, saying, "You have no soul, you have no soul, you have no soul."
I think that would be good. I think that introducing time travel would maybe be too far for me, for the prisoner.
If you think knowing what I know of future episodes, that's an interesting claim to make.
We'll get there. People keep on hearing us talk about cowboys. That's right. Number 6 jumps in his time machine and goes back to cowboy times.
That's right. That does happen.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like, a bunch of what's happening in the village, right, is like playing off of like technologies of control. And so if you wanted to do some sort of time machine episode, I do like the idea that or time loop episode. I do like the idea of them having a machine that's doing this control thing, right? But I'd want it to be more explicitly for a purpose. Like, if the fans are right, and this is part of like a torture arc for number 6, they're just like, the village is just brutalizing him. I'd want them to have intentionally put him in the time loop, right?
Sure.
And the goal would have been for him to escape, but only after suffering a few dozen explosions.
Right, yeah. We
work.
basically just invented the game Deathloop.
Yeah, well.
It's a good game.
Can't believe that the prisoner came up with Deathloop.
But
now you...
Yeah, now I have to rate the show. There's so
now
much...
you got it. You can't put it off any longer, Brendan.
There's so many good little bits
It's true.
And so much that I want to like, and so much that could have come together in a different way. I'm going to give this episode 51 out of 100 seals of office.
Brendan. I was going to do number 50 out of 100.
You still can. You can do that.
I think I still can. I'm going to go 1 point lower than you.
I'm
number 50
old number
100.
2. You're young new number 2.
And together we're going to kill number 6.
And me.
Hey!
I still don't have a name.
Oh, dang it.
I'm number 2.
Oh, there we go. Finally, we've met number 2.
That's right.
Hey, Brendan, what are we watching next time?
Wait. 50 out of 100 what's?
Oh, just numbers.
No, you can't do that.
Okay, yeah, fair. 50 out of 100 appreciation monuments.
Yeah. That's a perfect rating in my book.
It's pretty good. It's a pretty good one.
Absolutely.
What are we watching next time?
Next time, I've got the page up. I'm double checking. I'm glad that I double checked because I would have gotten it wrong.
We're nearing, we're in the home stretch.
We're in the home stretch. You can tell that we're getting towards the end because of the contentiousness of the quality of the episodes. A thing that happens. Next time.
Go ahead.
Please. No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, this next one is a fan favorite as well.
This is a fan favorite. This is the one that the longest runningest prisoner fan site takes its name from. Next time, we will watch A Change of Mind.
Looking forward to it.
Me too.
But until then,
Matthew, where can people find you on the internet?
Well, you can find me at Matthew Guz, G-U-Z or G-U-Z, at Blue Sky. And Brendan, how about you?
You can find me at brendanmcleod.com on Blue Sky. You can follow my blog at brendanmcleod.dev. You can also listen to my new podcast, Paper Labyrinths, where me and Nick Tringali, who guested with us on our Columbo episode, have conversations about game design across a variety of disciplines: tabletop design, video game design, board game design, immersive theater, ARGs, all kinds of stuff.
It's good.
Thank you.
Listen to those first couple eps. Y'all had some fun conversations. I do think the pitch is maybe a little long. It's all these. It's at these intersections.
That's right. It's at a crossroads that has 9+.
And they all lead to Rome, weirdly.
Yeah, it's weird. It's sort of a Mobius intersection. You can find the show at the-prisoners-dilemma.com. You can find our artist, Cy Sweetman, at cyfsweetman.card.co. You can find our musician, Devin Nelson, at devindecibel.bandcamp.com. Is there anything else we have to say on this show?
I think that's usually it, except, Brendan, I'll be seeing you.
Me too.
Say it. You have to say it.
Not if I see
You have to say it.
first.